Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video I'm going to be talking about the Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan, the third book in the Wheel of Time series. And before getting into the review, once again have to say a quick thank you. We hit 100 subscribers recently. Uploaded my BookTube newbie tag on Tuesday mentioning how I was thankful for us being close to 80, and since then we've already hit 100 and it's Saturday now, so it only took a few days. It took less than 2 weeks for us to hit 100, so thank you so much for that. So getting back into the review, guys, this is probably my favorite series already. I already think I'm enjoying it more than Stormlight overall, because something about the world, the depth of it, and the characters, the journey that they go on, what Jordan created here is just something amazing, and I'm thoroughly enjoying the ride so far. That being said, this is probably my least favorite of the three so far, and that is because I suffered an injustice, a betrayal if you will. In my last review, I mentioned how I would like to have a bit more Matt and more Perrin, because I thought they needed a bit more development. And thankfully we did get a lot more from Matt and Perrin both in this book, but unfortunately it was a double-edged sword. It came with a lot more Egwene, and it is no secret how much I hate her, despise her with a passion, and unsurprisingly, I still hate her after this book. So this is kind of a Shallan situation for me if you've read Stormlight. I don't particularly care about Shallan as much as I do the rest of the main POVs in that series, the same way I don't really care as much about Egwene in this series, and even more so in this book specifically. And the way in which they are similar is that I feel like you get more of the more interesting information pertaining to the world through their POVs, even though they are characters I don't particularly care as much for, which leads to me kind of enjoying their arcs less, even though I do really enjoy the exposition given to us through their arcs. So unfortunately this did lead to me enjoying this book a bit less than the previous two, but I still wouldn't place it that far below them. Another very strong theme in this book is braid tugging. This book is actually primarily about braid tugging. That is the main plotline of this book. Nynaeve is tugging her braid tightly, sharply, any which way whenever she is frustrated, worried, or annoyed. And that is some very interesting plotline. It gives us a lot of thought-provoking questions to be answered by the end of the book, and I really enjoyed that plotline. It was a big highlight of the book. And then we have the smaller B plot. In the prologue we get another really good prologue. This one features the Lord Captain Commander of the Children of Light, Pedron Niall, I think is that's how it's pronounced, and we get to see a chapter of him interacting with Padan Fain, who now is going by the name of Ordieth. I'm not sure how to pronounce that, but Jordan really just does not miss with the prologues. I really enjoyed all three so far. And this book, if you want to consider the first three books as a kind of trilogy, that's what I've been doing, and they look at the nature of prophecies from different aspects. I felt like book one you had denial, book two you had acceptance, and then book three was kind of looking at the inevitability of the prophecies. We see through our characters what happens to them, that there is really no use in trying to deny the prophecies. You can't stop them from coming to fruition really, and we mainly see this through the eyes of Rand and Perrin, and a bit from Matt as well. You kind of see how all the prophecies are going to come true, whether you like it or not, and you see how strongly Taviran kind of pull on the pattern to kind of bring everything towards the prophecies being fulfilled. Rand is pretty much non-existent in this book, which is actually what I wanted after the Great Hunt. Our main POVs are Egwene, Perrin, and Matt, in that order probably. So the pressure of being the Dragon Reborn is mounting, and Rand is cracking under it. There are people dying out in the country, dying in his name, calling out for him. Meanwhile, he's stuck in hiding with the rest of the crew. And this, in combination with his quickly deteriorating mental state and his struggle with the One Power, leads to him going on his own once again towards Tyr. This leads to Moraine, Lan, Perrin, and Loial giving chase. While this is underway, we have Matt, Egwene, Nynaeve, and Elaine. They're on their way back to the White Tower, and soon enough they find out this is not quite the sanctuary they believed it to be. So Matt and Perrin very, very quickly shot up to contend for my favourite character in this book, which is especially impressive coming from Matt, because before this book, Matt did not have really a character arc. His whole arc was just the dagger, and before the dagger, he was just the troublemaker. That was all there was to Matt before this book, and he got a lot of character development in this, which I loved. We also get a lot more world building in this. The world building is, as always, phenomenal. We learn a lot more about the Aes Sedai, we learn a bit more about the history of the world, and we learn a lot more about the spirit portion of the magic system, which I really enjoyed. And we also get to learn a lot more about the Aiel culture, which was also great. This book also shows you just how severely the shadow has started to take hold on the world. There are a lot more and seemingly even bigger threats than the Black Aja, and their influence on society is a lot more prevalent than you may even expect. So I felt like this book in particular did an amazing job at making the world feel actually lived in. We start to see just how badly the effects of previous books are starting to affect the citizens, and we see just how badly the state that Korean was left in after the Great Hunt is starting to affect nations far and wide. Prices for everything are increasing due to shortages and trouble in Saldea. Korean and Andorra on the brink of war. Refugees are flooding Andorra en masse as well, and even the lack of Korean's grain trade is having severe effects on the people. And all of this just really adds to the immersion that keeps me enthralled in these books from start to finish. The story is structured similarly to The Great Hunt. You know, we have our characters and they separate, and slowly throughout their journeys, they're brought back to a reunion. And this really leads to the maximum growth from all of the characters. Well, at least for Matt and Perrin, I felt like the female characters in this really kind of took a step back in this. Elaine, Egwene, and Nynaeve, they were just not very tolerable in this book, I felt like. When you're not reading from their own POVs, they just come off as really bitchy, and I just did not enjoy that very much. The ending had the same increase in pacing, the Jordalanche, and honestly, it just didn't work out for me too much. Sorry. When I finished this book, I was kind of just sitting there like, okay, I guess that's it, it's over, time for the next one. And it just didn't really give me the same satisfaction as the previous two books when I was finished. Getting to the ending was great. The start of the ending up until the middle was amazing. I loved the conclusion of Matt and Perrin's arcs individually as well. But for some reasons that I'll explain in the spoiler section, Rand's arc kind of just fell at the last hurdle for me. This was still overall a really great read that I would still recommend highly. So that's all for the spoiler free section. I'm going into the spoiler heavy stuff now. Perrin and Matt really stole the show for me in this book, which is exactly what I wanted. Perrin is dealing with the drawbacks of being a wolf brother. They're sending him messages more frequently. They're trying to stay relatively near him at all times. He's starting to think more like a wolf. He's starting to even have more senses like the wolf, the way he smells, the way he hears. And he's even started to think in wolf terms. He's calling Trollocs the Twisted Ones, and he's calling humans two legs at times. He's even calling the Fades Neverborn sometimes. He's also coming to terms with the fact that his fate is tied in with Rand's. During The Great Hunt, I felt like Nynaeve's arc really nicely mirrored Rand's, and during the Dragon Reborn, I felt like Perrin's did. Not in the same way, I felt like he mirrored Rand's arc throughout the whole three books instead of just this one where he's the main focus. Similarly to Rand, Perrin is confronted with the ever-increasing possibility of going insane due to his powers. He even meets another wolf brother who has unfortunately lost the mental struggle, and he is left in this wolf-like feral state. And this just drives Perrin to an even deeper denial of his abilities. It even brings him to the point of not wanting to sleep anymore out of fear of the wolf dreams that he'll encounter while he is asleep. And eventually he does transition from this towards more trying to tame his abilities and not letting the wolf within consume his being. And I thought this mirrored Rand's arc pretty nicely because Rand also has to balance his usage of the one power lest he be consumed and used up by it. And Perrin is also getting a lot more confidence during this book, which I loved seeing. He's starting to stand up to Moiraine, even outright arguing with her at times, which I loved because I'm getting very sick of everybody saying, oh, I'm sick of what the Aes Sedai are telling me to do. I'm not doing what the Aes Sedai say anymore. Definitely messed up that pronunciation just there. But everybody is always like that, and then they always end up doing what they say one way or another. Getting very tired of that. I'm glad to see Perrin is willing to really put his foot down, and so is Rand. I'm loving seeing that as well. His struggle between blacksmith and warrior is also at his highest. He's really longing to be back in the forages, and the chapter of him and Tyr doing the blacksmith jobs was easily one of my favorites in the whole books. Same as the chapter of him and Gaul when he freed Gaul, finessed some white cloaks with a swiftness. Loved that chapter, and it really showed how tight together his fate was with Rand's because Gaul again shows up at the end at the Son of Tyr. And I really hope Gaul shows up again. I've mentioned numerous times how much I love the companions in this book. I hope that Gaul is gonna be a companion type character for Perrin at some point in the future. So in my Great Hunt review, I made the prediction that Perrin is a servant reincarnated, and that given his blacksmithing background, would end up being really strong in the powers of creation, and he would give up his axe for a hammer eventually. Now, I feel like this book pretty much all but confirmed this prediction. At the very start of this book, I think it was like chapter 4, he meets Elan Morin, but he's not aware it's him. And he notes that when he's talking to Elan Morin, he is given the vibe that he has had this conversation before. Elan Morin has. And unless I'm misinterpreting this, I feel like maybe Elan Morin is feeling this way because he is talking to Perrin, who is the reincarnation of a servant that he knows, because we know from the prologue of the Dragonman prologue in The Eye of the World that Elan Morin was a servant himself before returning to the Shadow. And if that's not enough evidence, in the exact same dream, Perrin looks into the mirror and sees who he is the reincarnation of. And that is just another way I felt like Perrin mirrored Rand's arc so far. Furthermore, throughout the book, we see Perrin think more as a blacksmith, the way a blacksmith would. There is instances where he finds something peculiar and he likens it to something that would happen while blacksmithing. Now, normally I would kind of just allocate this to the fact that Perrin is longing to be a blacksmith again, and I would think that this is just his blacksmith side showing. But I think that whoever he is the reincarnation of is influencing how he thinks, the same way his wolf brother abilities are. Because if you think back to Rand during the Great Hunt, he is starting to be more influenced by Lews Therin's personality and the way he thought. There was moments where that came through for him. It was a bit more clearly than they may be for Perrin, but I think it's maybe the same thing happening. We also meet Perrin's love interest, or I guess I should say his falcon, Fail, or Zareen Bashir. I really love their interactions together. They are easily the best ship so far. It is really no contest. Sorry, Nynaeve and Lan fans. I'm really excited to see how her character is developed in future books. Once again, this series shows it has the best side characters. The way Jordan writes all the people that our main characters meet just makes them so enjoyable to spend time with. We meet Mother Gwenna, Fail, and Joylyn, and they were all gems. Not to even mention the Aiel that we meet through different people's POVs, they were all great too. We also see a bit more of Lanfear in this. She's doing her own thing, she's plotting against Alan Morin, she's has her own goals in mind, and she's Els now, or else is a part of her. Don't know how that worked out. I don't know how that's even possible, but I'm excited to see where it goes with that, if she uses her form again to try and trick people. So I've already mentioned how I feel like Perrin's are kind of mirrored Rand's in the series so far. And I feel like similarly, Matt also does, but to a lesser extent. We see clearly that he is the reincarnation of Aemon, who is the king of Manetheren mentioned during the Eye of the World. This was something else I predicted during the Great Hunt review, similarly to how I felt like Perrin was influenced his decisions by who he's the reincarnation of. I feel like Matt was as well, and it was pretty much all but confirmed that he was. We straight up see Matt relive his final battle at Emond's Field. We see him live the battle through Aemon's eyes, and in the same way, I feel like Perrin is being influenced a bit mentally by who he's the reincarnation of. I feel like Matt is very obviously being influenced mentally by him being the reincarnation of Aemon, because we see in that memory dream he had of looking through Aemon's eyes that Aemon said he likes to gamble or something like that. He's basically tossed the coin to fate, so to speak, when he led the final charge on Emond's Field. And I don't even need to explain how strongly that influenced Matt in this book, because Matt is literally constantly gambling. He's constantly playing dice and playing games of fate. Now, the way I see Matt in mirroring Rand in this is that he seemingly touched the true source in this. In the Eye of the World, we saw them going towards Baerlon, and Rand touched the true source for the first time to restore Bella's fatigue. Now, in the Dragon Reborn, we had a scene where Matt seemingly, to me, touched the true source to have this kind of string-like ability, which caused him to change the way the dice would land when Komar was using weighted dice. And the same way Rand felt this kind of rush of coolness through him as he used that ability to restore the fatigue of Bella, Matt noted that he felt this kind of stringy presence around him, and he felt those strings pull at the dice to make them land how he wanted them to. Matt in this was simply amazing. I loved watching his character get fleshed out. We saw that he is still the same humorous boy that we knew him for, but there is a lot more substance to him now. We see that he takes more time to think out his situations and about how to talk to people. We see that he now knows he shouldn't just say the first thing that comes into his mind. And we see that there's a lot more integrity to him than we may have given him credit for as well. Him giving the struggling mother and her withering children some coins in, where was it, Korean, that was a big highlight of the book for me. I loved that scene, and you get to see really that he does care more about people and their safety than he lets on. I mean, he went all the way from Camelin to Tyr and broke into the Stone of Tyr of all places to try and rescue the girls. He's also a lot more clever than I definitely gave him credit for. Him being able to understand the fireworks enough to unknowingly create a bomb out of them, I thought that was pretty impressive. And even how he just used the coal and sand in the tin box to light that fuse, I thought that was really smart of him, very clever. Matt had a lot of highlights in this book. His fight versus Galad and Gawain was amazing, probably my favorite fight in the first 3 books, just because there was no stupid stance names in them. The chapter about him infiltrating Camelin's royal garden and the Son of Tyr, those chapters were amazing as well. Who but Matt would go around the royal garden of Andor with a flower in his hair having the time of his life, and his duo with Tom as well. I really like that dynamic. I hope there's more of it in the future. Something else I really enjoyed actually that also highlighted how Taviran pull on the weave was how Aludra and Tammuz showed up again. That was really cool. I really enjoyed that little short interaction with Matt and Aludra. So Rand is barely in this, so I don't really have much to say, but when we do see him, he is struggling more and more with his dreams, but at the same time, he's getting a better grasp on how to use the one power. He is very much still out of control with it, but he is starting to get a better handle on the basics. And there was this one awesome chapter where he uses flows of air and he like turns his assailants towards him, and he says this awesome line. I can't remember it word for word, but he's like, if I am the dragon, then isn't this how it should be? And he just uses the air flows to make them kneel in front of him. Thought that was so cool. So the girls in this, they were just straight up insufferable when not reading from their POVs. They are just needlessly bitchy towards everyone, especially men. They all really lost points with me in this book. Nynaeve, I still love Nynaeve. She's still one of my favorites. We didn't get much from her, I felt like. She's starting to slowly temper her temper. Yep. And which was great to see. Towards the start of the book, she was pretty annoying because she was constantly testy and getting frustrated over every little thing, but I'm not going to take points off her for that because it was pretty clear that that's just the only solution she saw at the time for dealing with her problem of not being able to use the one power that great unless she does touch the anger within her. But we are starting to see just how strong and capable she is. Egwene continues to be the bane of my existence. I can't stand her still to this day. And I would have thought a whole book where it is predominantly her perspective would have changed my mind on this. I thought maybe I would start to not hate her. Maybe I'd start to even like her. But no, it somehow managed to make me like her even less. I felt like she didn't grow in this book as a character. They just spent so much time showing, oh, she is strong and capable. I didn't need to be shown this more. I already knew that from the first two books. I know she's strong. I know she's capable. But I hate her. Change her personality. Make her grow a bit in that regard, please. Egwene just has the worst personality possible, besides just being plain rotten like Leandrin. Take how she acts with Nynaeve. Oh my god, that was so infuriating. Could not stand that. And not even because I like Nynaeve, she was just being so fucking childish and self-centered, and she has that feeling of self-importance all the time. If the boys don't want to do what Nynaeve tells them to do, it's because they're sick of being manipulated by Aes Sedai and the likes, and they're sick of being used as tools in prophecies they have no desires to be a part of. And then you have Egwene, who just can't be below possibly any woman ever. She has to be the best. She wants all the power. She's so fucking greedy. And she's a woman now, and she's accepted now. She never needs to listen to Nynaeve ever again. How dare Nynaeve still treat her like a kid? How dare she still try and act like she knows what she knows better than Egwene? Then there's Elaine. Don't really have much to say about Elaine. She is the MVP in this book just because she bitch slapped Egwene. She's just as bad as the other two when it comes to being bitchy. They're just needlessly bitchy to everybody in this book, especially in the way they treat Matt. Really grinded my gears for the whole book. They first meet him in the White Tower in his room and just treat him with such detestable condescension. They treat him like an absolute pea brain that they can just wrap right around their fingers. They are telling Elaine, I'll give him a pretty face and he'll do whatever you want, blah blah blah. And it's just so annoying throughout the whole book. And when Matt rescues them, they have the audacity to use the one power on him. That annoyed me beyond words. And then when they stop and Matt calls him out, and Nynaeve is like, oh god, yeah, I guess you're right. And then they just leave. And when he tells them in the hallway outside their cells that is still dangerous in the stone, they just treat him like a complete pea brain again and just disrespect him and act like, oh god, you know so little, Matt. Oh, you don't know anything, Matt. We can look after ourselves, Matt. Like, you cannot just not explain anything and then treat the people you don't explain anything to like they're idiots. That is so annoying. Like, is that really how all Aes Sedai came to be? They can channel and they go through a tough initiation and now they feel like it's just their birthright to treat everybody like shit, and that they can just treat everybody that knows less than them as some kind of fucking interruption and annoyance. So we learn a whole lot during Egwene's POV. There's honestly so much, I can't just go through it in the one video. There's too much. I'm just going to focus on what I really enjoyed the most, and that was Tel Arin Riad. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we see Egwene go into more detail in that. She learns how to use her dreamer abilities more. That was really fun to watch, even though I hate Egwene, but that was really fun. And we see how this links into Perrin's arc as well, because Perrin, as a wolf brother, has the ability to access Tel Arin Riad as well. So Tel Arin Riad seems to be a separate dream world / mirror world that people who are particularly strong with the spear aspect can access. And we get a lot of foreshadowing through this, which was really fun to watch. You know, I love to make my predictions, so I was really enjoying that. And there was a lot of foreshadowing. We saw a lot of Baal Zaman in the dream world as well. We saw the return of the mirror little construction that he seems to have made in the dream world, where he brought Ran during the Out of the World. He brought some Soulless there to intimidate them, so it was fun to see that pop up again. So we also saw Egwene do her accepted testing. I'm not gonna lie, this was just okay for me. I feel like Egwene's arc in this book was just showing how strong and capable she is, which I'm just not interested in. I already knew that, as I've explained earlier. I would have really more appreciated if there was a bit of character growth there, which it didn't feel like to me. If anything, it felt like she regressed a bit. She seemed a lot more immature to me after this book. During her testing, we saw Elida as Black Aja. If she is Black Aja, I will be fucking furious. Elida, yes, you are about to hear correctly. Forewarned. Elida is my favorite Aes Sedai. I love her. I think she is very mean, but beneath it, she does genuinely care about Elaine. If she is Black Aja, I will really be upset, because they done this last book where Liandrin is obviously mean. She's obviously a dark friend, and I hope Elida is not the same case. She seems to not be. And in the same vein, I'm really hoping Shirayim is Black Aja, because I want the reverse of what happened last book to be what happened in this book, where last book I wanted Liandrin to be the good one and Anaya to be the Black Aja. So I hope that's reversed now. Even if Elida takes an antagonistic role in the story, I think she'll still have good intentions. That's what I'm hoping for. I loved how the Forsaken were used in this. I loved how they showed their influence on the world from behind the scenes, but high up behind the scenes. You had Samael in Ilian, then you had Bilal in Tyr, and then you had Gabriel in Camelin. Now, I don't believe it said which one Gabriel is in terms of Forsaken names, but at the start of the book, Moiraine listed a few Forsaken. The two that didn't show up in this were Ravin and Asmodean, and then at the end of the book, Moiraine only mentions Ravin. She did not mention Asmodean again. So I think maybe Ravin is the one that Gabriel is. Now, that would not be something that Moiraine is aware of, but I think maybe a hint to the reader. If you notice this at the start, here's your hint at the end, is Ravin. I really loved the foreshadowing of the Forsaken as well and their involvement. At the start of the book, when Perrin is in the dream that I mentioned in chapter 4, he saw Elan Morin have a meeting with them, I think. Unless it was something in the past. I couldn't tell if it was in the past that he was seeing or a meeting in the present between the Forsaken, but he seemed to be in the ways, well, before it became dark, so maybe it was in the past, but it seemed to be a meeting anyways between Elan Morin and Bilal and one other Forsaken, unless that Forsaken was actually Luz Terran. If it was in the past, I presume. And there was a woman as well, I think that might have been Lanfear. So Perrin walked in on that meeting or experienced that memory, and then fast forward and we meet the ship captain, can't remember his name, but the one Matt and Tom met. He was talking about how there's a new High Lord in Tyr and how it was a bit of a strange occurrence and he rose to the top so quickly. And then what else did you have when they were in Camelin, and Tom noted how turning away refugees was very unlike Morghese. So I really liked how they gave the subtle hints to the Forsaken's involvement, and I also really liked how they showed that the Forsaken's interests were not actually aligned. They were kind of having a power struggle and they each have their own goals in mind, so I'm excited to see how that plays out. So the ending just very slightly missed the mark for me. Perrin and Matt's arcs I loved from start to finish. Perrin's arc, especially at the very end, was amazing. One of my favourite parts of the book. I think my favourite part actually overall was him hammering on that final lock to rescue Fael. Just watching him literally dive into the dream world after her to save her was just bliss. Love that. Matt's arc ending as well was amazing. He rushed into stone to save the girls. Love that. But Bran's part just did not do much for me, if I'm being honest. He shows up finally in the heart of the stone. He gets Kalandor, but before that he has to be confronted by Bilal, and this is where things started to be kind of for me. He's struggling against Bilal. Bilal is winning pretty much, and then Moiraine just waltzes in, all laddie fucking da, does a kamehameha, and then he's turned to fucking ashes. That was just really anticlimactic for me. I felt like that was just way too convenient. I know they teed it up with the whole Tavir and stuff, but I just was not a fan really. The Forsaken so far have just been super, super lame, considering that they are the Dark Friends most high up in the rankings. You had Agenor, Balthamel, and now Bilal, who were just seriously just lame villains. I'm not gonna lie, they were dealt with way too easily. And then even Elan Morin, I am praying that it is all a part of his plan. I think it is. I don't think he's this weak because he was against Luz Terran and he used to be a servant, so I think he is stringing them along. I actually think that all the Forsaken that have died so far will be returning, because we've heard so many times in this series that death is the domain of the Dark One, so I feel like that's been said too many times for them to not return from death, them being the Forsaken. Now, the final sequence with Ran chasing after Elan Morin, I know a lot of people thought that was pretty hype. That as well just kind of fell flat for me, if I'm being honest. I really have no interest in watching Rand just do a bunch of overpowered shit and then be like, I don't know the how or the why or the which. And I know the whole point of his overpoweredness is that yes, he is OP, but he also has no control, so it's like a double-edged sword. I just didn't really enjoy how that was done. I never enjoy that kind of thing in any form of media. I don't care what the intention is, if I'm being honest. Just watching him stroll along so easily like that didn't do much for me. It was cool seeing him reverse the traps, that was cool, but yeah, didn't vibe with the whole thing overall. And another way in which this kind of fell flat for me is that at the end, we're kind of just back to square one. I know that's the whole formula, but I don't know, just them going through everything, and then they're back pretty much under Moraine's watch. She's just there at the table looking out to give them orders again. She's in control again. I just don't know, wasn't too happy with that. I am pretty sure Rand will be doing his own thing now. He seems to be in charge of himself, so I am excited to see how that goes. And they finally came to the realization that the Dark One is not Ishamael or Baal Zaman, Alan Morin. Well, they're not aware that it's Alan Morin yet, but they finally figured out it's Ishamael at least. So despite my lack of interest in Egwene's arc and the slight disappointment I had with the ending, I did really enjoy this book. I love this book still. I only very slightly put it below the other two. Something I really want to see going forward. I felt like while this book did look very closely at inevitability of the prophecies, I felt like it kind of teed up the boys to kind of defy that inevitability in its own right. I think Matt especially will be the one to defy prophecy because he is the gambler in a deck of cards. In our world, there is the Joker card, and I feel like the way Matt has been going, he has this whole luck-based ability, he has the mischievous personality, he likes to be humorous, he likes to play pranks, he is teed up to be the Joker in my eyes. And if you don't play cards in real life, don't know why you wouldn't, but the Joker card normally in a game of cards is used to defy the rules. So with this whole kind of, let's say, Joker aspect possibly being applied to Matt, and with the combination of him being a hero, because it was said a good few times by Matt in here that, oh, I'm not actually a hero, I'm just doing what I want, blah blah blah. I can't remember what he said exactly, but I feel like we actually just met the hero, the true hero of our story in Matt. For some reason, those two aspects are just making me think maybe Matt is the true hero of the story, because Rand has been shown to be kind of going down the whole duty route. He's doing what he thinks he needs to, what he has to. So I don't think that really coincides with being a hero, really. So predictions now, my favorite part of the video, my favorite part to record. I already done some throughout the video, but this is the dedicated section now. So as far as my predictions with Matt and Perrin from the last book went, I've already talked about this. I think they're pretty much all but confirmed. I also predicted from last video that Logain was not finished with the One Power, and that he would regain his abilities in some way if he isn't pretending to not have them currently. And I said that I thought it would be either Nynaeve or Rand to heal his gentling. And now at the start of this book, Moraine is going through some prophecies that even the Aes Sedai aren't fully aware of the meaning behind. And a part of that prophecy is that wounds of madness and cutting of hope being healed, and another being chains being broken by the dragon. So those... Sorry about that interruption, my dog barked. Don't know what she heard. If you were wondering where she went early in the video, she just went right behind me there. She does like to be as close as possible. She's a bit cute like that. Don't know if I'll leave that in. Maybe you guys found it funny. Maybe I'll leave it. But anyways, as I was saying, I felt like those two things in the prophecy hinted towards Rand not only breaking the chains, keeping Logain gentled, but will also lead to him curing the madness given to people by the taint on Saladin. And if that is the case, that opens up some crazy possibilities. You can have a whole bunch of male Aes Sedai back, but they don't even have to be Aes Sedai. They can be on Rand's side. So I'm really looking forward to see what happens with that. Also, in the same bit of prophecy, it is said that the dragon shall bind the 9 moons. Now, Robert Jordan, he thought he was slick with that, thought he was getting a sneaky one past me. That is not the case. And it was mentioned during the Great Hunt that the Court of 9 Moons is used by the, I think it was the Empress of the Shan-Chan nation. I think that's where she rules. I guess Rand is going to go there and just cause a complete disaster and end up making them bend the knee to him. That would be pretty cool to see, I guess. But last review, I also predicted that the white flame Min saw over Egwene's head was corresponding to the white flame on the Keeper of Chronicles staff that we saw Leanne using. So I'm pretty sure I was wrong with that, because in this book, when Egwene is witnessing Matt being healed by all the Aes Sedai and the Amaryllis Seat, she notes that the Sa'angreal that is used, when she looks at it through the same vision that she would use to look at the glow of Saadar surrounding the different Aes Sedai, she noted that the Sa'angreal in use seem to be like a blinding big white flame. So I think I will change my prediction to that now. I think that is pointing towards Egwene using that sangreal at some point. So pretty sure Egwene is going to be at the Amerlin seat at some point in the future. So Egwene, in her arc with Talair and Riyadh, she dropped a whole load of foreshadowing. So she mentioned the hawk and falcon when she had a dream about Perrin, the falcon obviously being Fail, and the hawk being the first of Maine. When she entered at the end of the book, she had her coronet on, or coronet, don't know how you pronounce that, but that had a hawk on the front, so that is the hawk. I'm interested in seeing how that plays out. I guess Rand isn't the only one attracting royalty's attention, and I don't know how that's going to play out with her versus Fail. So Egwene also saw Perrin surrounded by a huge pack of wolves as far as the eye could see. Hopper also mentioned during this that there was every wolf that has ever been in the past, present, and ever will be in the future. They are all present in Tel Air and Riyadh. So words can't really describe how excited I am to see that come to fruition in the story. Don't know when that will. And I think it's also very heavily hinted that Perrin will be the one to rediscover the lost talent of flying, because I think it would be very fitting considering it's what Hopper always wanted, and two, Egwene literally saw him getting ready to fly for the first time. She said she saw him standing atop the sheer side of the cliff, saying that he needs to fly at that moment. Egwene also saw some stuff for Matt in her dreams as well. She saw him placing his left eye on a balance scale. This was actually mentioned in book 1 already. Min saw the eyeball on a balance scale when she looked at Matt's aura in The Eye of the World. I'm not really sure what this could be predicting, but it is mentioned during this book that when all the dice face upwards with one pip, that's called the Devil's Eyes. So I'm thinking maybe that's what it's symbolizing, because I've made some mistakes in my predictions thinking too literally about what stuff means. So I think that's what it's symbolizing here. So another quick little light prediction about Corianne and Adil. She was mentioned a lot in this book. She was the main Aes Sedai researcher on the Dream World, and she went missing. So quick light prediction on her. I think she's in the Dream World somewhere, and I think she might actually be the really ugly woman that Egwene saw when she was in the what was it called, the Heart of the Stone for the first time. She saw this random ugly woman show up while she was in there. Now I know the Aes Sedai are ageless, but if she's in the Dream World for that long, it was shown to damage Perrin to be separated from his body for that long. So maybe being in the Dream World that long messed up how she looks. But I think that is Corianne in the deal that she met. And if it's not her, then she's in there somewhere else. I'm getting into my last two predictions now, and these are the two biggest I've ever made by far. And the reason I'm making such big wild ones is because I feel like a good chunk of my predictions were hinted at being true in this, or damn near confirmed to being true in this. So I'm making two really big wild ones here. They're just going to be complete swings in the dark. Coriannon's notes also leads me to these last two predictions. So the first big guess is that Alan Morin is the good guy, at least when it comes from a moral perspective in the greater scheme of things. And this comes from Coriannon's notes. Varen read a bit of it to Egwene, and in these notes it said, "Betrayer of hope, Ishamael betrays all hope. Truth burns and sears, hope fails before truth. A lie is our shield. Who can stand against the heart of the dark? Soul of shadow, soul of the shadow. He is..." And then it cuts off there. So Varian mentioned that Coriannon alluded to the truth, but it was a truth that the world could not handle. So what better truth for the world to not be able to handle than Baalzamon actually being the one who's in the right the whole time? Also, the way the passage is structured seems to me like they were about to introduce the Heart of the Shadow as the one to actually oppose Baalzamon, but who is the one to oppose Baalzamon? The dragon, Rand. So is the dragon really the soul of the shadow and the one who's really going to be on the side of evil? Or not even on the side of evil, but just who's in the wrong in the greater schemes of things? And the way I tried to do this for myself logically is that Baalzamon is the betrayer of hope, and Coriannon said hope fails before truth, and that a lie is our shield. So I think that the way of the world currently is something unnatural. The whole system of the Wheel of Time, the repeating of things, the reincarnations of things and people. So Baalzamon has said that he wants to break the Wheel of Time, so maybe he wants to set the world back into its natural course. What is the natural way of the world? The natural way of the world is the way of Earth. I think Wheel of Time is set on Earth. I don't think it's a secondary world. I think it might be an urban fantasy setting on Earth originally, and then I don't know what happened, maybe the breaking of the world. I don't really know the timeline still. I'm still a bit iffy on that. But maybe the Eye of the World happened on Earth, or not the Eye of the World, sorry. The breaking of the world happened on Earth, and that is how it got to the way we see it, because we know the breaking was started by Lews Therin, but it was continued on by other Aes Sedai to get to the point we see it at now. I think that's what's happening. I'm very sorry if I'm getting rambly here, but this is a pretty wild theory for me to construct. And I actually first suspected Wheel of Time being set on Earth during the Great Hunt, but I didn't include that in my predictions of that video because I thought that I was only thinking that way because of my inexperience with the fantasy genre. So what do I mean by that? After finishing the Great Hunt, I thought, is it not a bit weird that there was elephants and saber-toothed tigers mentioned? Because in the Great Hunt, at the very end, they mentioned the Shan-Chan using these big tusks animals that seem to be elephants. And I kind of wrote that off because I don't think war elephants is that uncommon in fantasy settings. Haven't read any other fantasy books that have them so far, but I don't think they are uncommon. They were in Berserk, I read that. And also, the saber-tooth thing, Bail Damon listed a bunch of stuff he had in his possession that were really old antiques, and one of those things was described to sound like a saber-tooth tiger skull. So yeah, as I explained, I didn't include this prediction because I thought it was just because of my lack of experience with the genre. But after finishing the Dragon Reborn, there's just way too much fauna in this world that I associate with Earth for me to not think it is an indication of it actually being set on some version of Earth. In the Great Hunt, we got the confirmation of the saber-tooth tigers and the elephants. Fast forward to the Dragon Reborn. When Egwene is meeting Varen in her chambers, she notes a very too long, large lizard skull. So that is confirmation of, to me, alligators or crocodiles. I'm not sure which one. While Perrin was initially trying to convince Fael that they were not actually people who knew where the horn was, he mentioned that the Mountains of Mist might actually have treasure in them. And that sparked a memory in me, and I really could not continue reading until I tried to figure out what I was remembering, because I just could not remember for the life of me. So I went back to the Eye of the World. When Matt and Rand are on the spray for the first time, they are talking to Bail Damon, and he notices the big shining white tower in the distance, and metal tower in the distance, and he mentions that to them. He explains to them what it is. I kept reading past here because I remembered that Bail Damon at some point mentioned that there was these bones being kept in the Panarch's palace in Tanchico. So I kept reading to see if this is where he mentioned them, and sure enough it was. There wasn't a description of the bones, so I couldn't tell what kind of animal that the bones belong to. But when I kept reading, Rand mentioned that him and the boys used to go into the sand hills, is that what they're called? He's mentioned that he went there sometimes, and he at one point found these big fish bones that were almost the size of the spray itself, and the spray itself is said to be around 80 feet, I believe. So that is confirmation to me of whales existing as well. Now back to the Dragon Reborn. When Perrin is first on his way to Ilian, he notices these big pale pink birds that look similar to cranes. So flamingos are also confirmed, unless I'm mixing them up with something. And then when Perrin first enters Tel Aeron Riyadh, he notices a deer-like animal that has straight brown stripes and straight horns. Now, I am no expert on the Bovidae family of animal, but there's one I know of called the Oribi. I know that has straight horns, but there's some kind of deer-like animal that is in our world, I presume, that he just spotted. To summarize, there's saber-toothed tigers, elephants, whales, crocodiles, flamingos, and some type of deer-like animal that we know too. And in Tyr, there was also sharks mentioned. I remember that now. There was also sharks mentioned at some point. Then at the very end, we also learned there's bamboo. Now, this could just be me taking some big swing and a miss, but I think bamboo is a bit like, am I being weird here? Is bamboo not a bit of a weird one to show up as well? So you have all the fauna, you're starting to get some of the flora as well. This is just pointing to Earth for me. So to come to a conclusion on my two crackpot theories here, I think that Earth was messed up by the breaking of the world, and that the whole pattern stuff and the stuff with the wheel repeating and everything, I think that is an unnatural occurrence, and Alan Moran wants to break that to bring Earth back to the way it originally was, and for some reason that makes him part of the bad side. So with those two crazy theories, that brings us to the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts down below. Let me know what I missed out on. Hope you guys enjoyed it. So next video will be on the Shadow Rising. See you guys in the next one.